now I want to talk about Cyborg Generation, which, as you might be able to tell from the title, is totally different than the other films that I've spoken about. Not that they are very similar, but this one is just so out of left field in the best way possible. And it was a really fun way to wrap up my first day at Hot Docs. So Cyborg Generation was directed by Miguel Murillo Vega and follows Kai, a young man who is inspired by his love of outer space and his burgeoning friendship with some of the world's first cyborg artists, to become a cyborg himself and to have an illegal surgery where he implants technology into his head that will give him the kind of cyborg ability to hear sounds coming from outer space. I'll let that sink in for a minute because, wow, right? I read that kind of blurb that Hot Docs put out about it and I was like, I need to see this film. And I'm really glad that I did. Stylistically, this felt like watching a sci-fi film. It had beautiful, bold colors, striking compositions. The soundtrack was literally out of this world, and I mean literally because it was composed by someone who can hear sounds from outer space and makes music out of that. So, whoa. And on top of that, it was shot on film, which is really impressive for a documentary, and really impressive for a documentary that looks like this. It looks incredible. You could go and watch this with the sound off and you'd still have an amazing time, but keep it on because there's actually a really, really beautiful story in this spectacular, shocking seeming plot synopsis that I've just laid out. I don't want to diminish the story or make it sound like it's some kind of joke because there's a really sensitively told and beautifully human story that is this documentary. So one thing that I want to address while I'm still kind of talking about the style here is that during the Q&A, the director explained that he was a little bit worried that people wouldn't believe that they're watching a documentary because of how stylized it is and because of how amazing it looks and because of how kind of outside people's expectations the subject matter and the story are. And I actually think that this uncertainty is doing the documentary a favor. I think that its philosophical power comes from the questions that it brings up through this marriage between a reality subverting topic and a reality subverting form. So it makes you ask, how can there be these extra human realities? Why might someone want to escape reality and find solace in another that's totally different from what most people could even conceive? Again, this film was a mind bender, and it's in the best way. I want to bring up something that really, really struck me earlier in this film, which was that one of Kai's cyborg friends makes a comment about how being a cyborg allows you to choose your oddities. And that line really put a lot of this documentary into perspective for me, because I was expecting this to be funny and kind of a spectacle. Not to say that it wasn't spectacular, because, again, you need to see these visuals. But it was actually a sensitive film that dealt with a lot of topics, and a big one is, how do you find a way to come into yourself and feel like you belong if society has cast you aside and told you that you don't belong and told you that there's things about you that are weird? I think that being a cyborg or engaging with this culture kind of gives people an opportunity to reclaim some of their interests that people might cast them aside for, or kind of reclaim their space in a society that might cast them aside. So I don't want to go too much more into it than that because I'm worried that I've confused you already. Don't be scared by how convoluted my description of this was. I'm trying my best because it's such an interesting topic. It's so far out there, but at the end of the day, this is a documentary that touches on identity, religious trauma, family relationships, ambition, what it means to be human. And if that does not sell you on it, I don't know what will. So overall, it was such a strong first day at Hot Docs for me. I